Ted Cruz aside, what is the government actually going to do when it comes to these enhanced unemployment benefits? Well, we have Steve Mnuchin, who is bothered by part of this process, as he makes clear in this video.
But the fundamental issue, and we all acknowledged, there was a technical problem where we were in emergency last time, so we instituted this quickly, and in certain cases people were paid more to stay home than they were to work. And I think that's something that the American public understands. We're not going to use taxpayer money to pay people more to stay home. So we're going to transition to a UI system that is based upon wage replacement. We've talked about approximately 70% wage replacement, and we're just going through the mechanics of that.
Okay, yeah, they're just going through the mechanics because that's all it is to him, because he's incredibly wealthy and he has been his entire life because he's born into a wealthy family. The thing that has bothered me is that this bothers them more than anything since the pandemic began. It has burrowed into their brain that someone might be temporarily making slightly more than minimum wage, and they won't abide it. They can't abide it.
These people have never worked minimum wage in their lives. They don't know what that's like. They have no idea how to survive on $7 an hour plus tips, or $4 or $5 an hour plus tips. Like, they've never worked these jobs ever. Steve Mnuchin, don't ever say his name without saying his middle name. His middle name is Steven Foreclosure King Mnuchin, okay?
Really?
This guy got rich off the 2008 financial collapse. He kicked people out of their homes. This man prides himself on the destitution of Americans. And don't ever look to the American people ever again before you look to your president, who has done F all to get this virus under control. Don't you ever come at Democrats. Don't you ever come at the American people. We are doing what little we can. It is completely, I'm like so incensed. I'm so mad. Mnuchin needs to disappear into his double chin forever. Goodbye.
Jesus. Yeah. Yeah, this is the only thing that is an injustice to them. From the beginning of the pandemic, through all of that, civil rights protests, all of that, this is the injustice, that they temporarily made a little bit more money, and we're not going to abide by it. We're not going to, as he said, we're not going to spend taxpayer dollars to let people stay at home. And as many people in the chat have pointed out, those are taxpayers that are going to be subsidized during this pandemic. They're not, like, I know that you don't think of them as fully human, and they're certainly not like you, but they're taxpayers. Do you know they paid taxes on all the money they made before they were unemployed? They pay taxes on their unemployment money. That extra $600, they pay taxes on that even. Like, they are literally taxpayers as you're giving them the money. But he's not going to give it to them.
What was the tax break for the wealth? Was it 1.9 trillion?
It was well, it keeps getting revised upward as those tend to. But yeah, it was a couple of $1 trillion. And he worked himself up into a sort of Zuckerberg-esque fury over somebody temporarily making minimum wage once again while not having to work. How enraged do you remember him being when he was okaying literally trillions of dollars going to corporations as part of the stimulus during the pandemic? I don't remember a lot of anger at that point, even though it was a lot of money and could, in theory, have the companies end up making as much money as they were before the pandemic. For shame. Now, here's the other issue, though. Because what he just laid out there is, we've got a solution. We're going to pay them less. We're going to scale it down to like 70% or whatever, and then we're still going to pay them. We're not ghouls. We just look like that. Here's the issue with that. According to a memo from the National Association of State Workforce Agencies obtained by NPR over the weekend, they warned that replacing the flat weekly payment with a more complicated individualized benefit based on prior income, quote, would take 8 to 20 weeks or more for most states to fully implement, depending on the formula the White House and the GOP ultimately propose. The short end is 2 months, meaning that such implementation delay could mean a huge gap in payments and a bigger backlog for millions. And I would wager to guess that if you're the sort of person that desperately needs this extra $400 to $600, you can't wait 2 to 5 months to start getting it.
Steve Mnuchin's his department paid stimulus money to dead people. I want everyone to remember that when they're talking about implementing some other kind of complicated system. Dead people were paid. And I know a lot of folks didn't get the $1,200 stimulus check to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are still waiting for that. A lot of people are still waiting for unemployment. So you're absolutely right. Like, do we trust this government to deploy something minimally more complicated?
Yeah.
No.
No, it's simple. Flat payment larger than $1,200 that recurs as long as the pandemic is going on, which might be the kick in the ass necessary for the government to actually do something about it. Enhance unemployment benefits for all who are laid off, and not through any fault of their own. They're being laid off, especially the ones that were laid off in the past couple of weeks, because of Republican governors and Donald Trump preemptively reopening the economy. That is not their fault. It wasn't their decision. They are a casualty of the economic war and public health war that the Republican Party is waging on the American people right now, and they need to be helped. And if it costs a lot, then fix it.
If the shoe were on the other foot, can you imagine, guys? Can you imagine for some reason, Democrats, the roles were reversed, right? And Democratic governors were the ones who were saying, go out and go to the beaches, gather, this virus is going away, nothing's happening. And Republican governors were the ones who were exercising caution. They would be demanding every single minute of every single hour that blue states pay for their unemployment benefits, that blue states are the ones to blame. Well, the same thing, right? We should be blaming Republican governors. If we had a real opposition, we know that the reason this virus isn't under control, we know that the reason that we have to stay inside continually, that we have to refrain from working, refrain from gathering, is because these buckethead Republican governors did not exercise caution. So once again, how dare you, as an entire party, as a strategy, and honestly, the journalist's job in all of these situations truly is to point this out time and time and time again. All right? Exactly. We're not idiots. This has been only 4 months. We all remember what it was like back in March. We've been watching this every single day. We've been watching this train wreck in slow motion. You could have seen it a mile away.
Yeah. And in terms of like the eviction crisis, of course, many people did. They just weren't really listened to. And so this only temporary measure was put into place. Like, it only needs to last till July because, well, come on, we're not going to have a pandemic after that. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.